Welcome to Missions Life, where we share resources and encouragement for current missionaries, future missionaries, and those praying for missionaries. Missions can be hard, and we want to help you face the challenges of life, leadership, and ministry. We want your life to bear fruit for the gospel wherever you are. I'm Kyle Ferran, here with my co-host and wife, Heather. Hello, today on the podcast, we have with us Rick Hicks. Dr. Rick Hicks is currently serving as the Special Assistant to the International Director of Operation Mobilization, as well as training boards on OM fields in effective board governance. Operation Mobilization is a non-denomination international mission agency working in over 130 countries around the world and comprised of about 5,200 missionaries from over 100 countries. Rick's previous roles in the OM include President of OM USA for 14 years and North America Area Leader for 6 years. In addition to his roles in OM, at the end of 2023, Rick retired from WCM Investment Management after serving for 10 years as their Chief Culture Officer. His role there involved helping the company focus on organizational health to identify and stay true to their culture, develop a team leadership, and help employees understand themselves, the culture, and how they fit into the organization. In addition to his current responsibilities in OM, Rick speaks at conferences, churches, colleges, businesses, and a variety of other groups throughout the country and around the world. In addition to promoting world missions, his topics include effective board governance, organizational health and culture, the understanding of temperaments, value development, and generational differences, thus promoting understanding within groups. His PhD, although in education, actually focused more on developmental and organizational philosophy. So, Rick, welcome to the Missions Life podcast. We've been looking forward to our conversation today about building healthy missionary teams.
Good. I'm happy to be with you guys.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure for us to get to know you. Our mutual friend Hans Finzel had connected us, so I was thankful for that. And before we dive into the questions, could you share a little bit about your missions, your journey into missions and ministry? And then what are you currently doing now?
Yeah. Well, it started back in the 60s. I was kind of, perhaps you've seen movies of the 60s. Well, I lived it. And I was kind of a typical Southern California, kind of a hippie, a druggie, long beard, ponytail. And I smuggled drugs out of Mexico. So when we do Bible smuggling now, I have some experience.
God uses it all, right?
Yeah. And then through the whole Jesus Revolution, you've probably seen the recent movie out there and all that. Well, I was a part of that and got saved. And I was about 20 years old. And it just hit me when I got saved, like, why didn't people tell me about this sooner? And then it struck me just as quickly, well, maybe I'm supposed to tell other people. And I just, from the day I got saved, had just a strong interest in sharing Christ with other people. And it didn't take long in the Christian world to realize it's not just in the U.S., and we have a lot of people certainly sharing the gospel in the U.S., and we can use more, but not so many people around the world. So I got interested in missions, and I was a part of a church that had a huge missions program. It was a relatively small church, but just major focus on cross-cultural missions. So I got engaged pretty quickly. And then once I got married to my wife, we both just realized at some point we wanted our life to kind of focus towards missions. We didn't know how, we didn't know where, but that was an interest. So that had kind of got me interested. And then I was the Dean of Student Life at Biola University, and I used to take these mission students. We had a student missionary union. We'd go up to the U.S. Center for World Missions. And Ralph Winter was up there then, and he became a friend of mine because I'd go up there a lot. And I asked Ralph one day, I just said, Ralph, I'm a dean of students right now, but I really kind of want to become a missionary. What do you think I should do? And he said, oh, it's easy. Just go get a PhD, which I'm kind of a non-academic guy. And I go, well, I'm not sure that's so easy. And I said, well, what should I get my PhD in? And he said, it doesn't matter. He said, if you're going to go around the world and you want to offer something to the world, it might be nice if you had something to offer. So you can get in the door, so you can present the gospel. So I actually went to Claremont Graduate School, studied with a guy named Peter Drucker on kind of organizational development, and
Yeah.
with the idea that I would take that around the world in some way, some shape. I didn't know how, but I just was kind of trusting the process, and that's kind of how I got involved. Um, as I got interested in missions, and then I started. Then I was working at a conference center by the time I graduated called Forest Home Christian Conference Center. It's got kind of a big history in the evangelical world, and I'd been there for really almost 20 years. And I started doing some consulting after after I got this PhD, and did a little consulting with Operation Mobilization. And then one day, like kind of out of the blue, they called me up and they go, "Hey, you want to be the president?" Um, and I'd never been a missionary, and was living in kind of upscale Orange County at a camp that was kind of for the upper middle class, and they wanted me to become the president of a really sacrificial, serving, boots on the ground, kind of gritty organization. And at first I said no because I didn't want to raise support. And then God made it clear that He wanted my wife and I to actually join. And 6 months later, we called back and we said, "Hey, is that role still open?" And they said, "Yeah." And long story short, we ended up raising our support relatively quickly and joined OM. And that's been probably 28 years ago.
Hmm. Wow. God definitely has interesting doors and opportunities for us, doesn't He?
Yeah.
And so, and right now, where are you at and involved in where your work now?
Well, I served as president for 14 years that you mentioned in the intro. And then kind of, we don't have much of a hierarchy in OM, but kind of the next level up is being the area leader. So I was over the countries in North America. Um, and that got too administrative. So I quit that relatively uh, shortly after I kind of got involved. It says 6 years, but I was just kind of hanging on. I really checked out pretty quick. And now, the main thing that I do in OM is I mentor people.
Okay.
Myself and another guy from the UK, we developed probably 20 years ago, we developed what we called our mentoring clinic. And it was a workshop that was a week long. And we'd go from like 9 in the morning till 9 at night for like 5 days. And so I taught mentoring and wrote some stuff on it. And so I just end up kind of mentoring people and teaching mentoring. But in addition to that, I kind of got involved in boards, and I realized, you can have a great organization and a great leader, but if you've got a board that's holding you back, it's going to really thwart the whole process. And I realized, in some cases, the guys that hold the keys to the kingdom are the board members. And I've seen some organizations that the boards have been really good and have propelled that ministry on to great success. And I've seen other ministries that their boards are a little whacked out and they've really wreaked some serious damage. So I worked with some guys through the McClellan Foundation and got trained, and now I train boards and I train people to train boards on good board governance. So that's what I'm doing currently.
Okay. Very good.
And I know that you've spent a lot of time really focusing on building healthy teams and helping, boards and groups of people work together. And that's kind of one of the focuses, the directions we want to take our conversation today. Why do you see such an importance on building those healthy teams, those healthy boards, those healthy governance groups?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, because you're really getting to the core of kind of group work of an organization. And just like our physical health is important and we need to be intentional about it, it doesn't just happen. Organizationally, it's important that we understand what health is and that we actually have a strategy to become and to stay and to maintain organizational health. And a lot of people just kind of say, yeah, I understand we need to be healthy, and I kind of hope we get there. But hope is not a good strategy. And so there are some things that you can do to be healthy. And the benefits of being a healthy organization is that it minimizes politics. It minimizes confusion within an organization. Healthy organizations help to develop high morale, higher productivity, and low turnover. Well, when you have those things, those are the byproducts of health. When you have those things, your organization, it can function a lot better as opposed to just day to day just wrestling with the tactics of where we're going and how we're getting there and who's doing what. So a good, healthy organization can benefit greatly by kind of understanding what health is and how to get there.
That's good. Yeah, I think we've all probably seen the what happens when an organization is or a team is unhealthy, and it is very unfortunate. When a team is unhealthy, what is typically the key reasons behind that lack of health?
Well, I think a lack of health comes from, I mean, the core issue is when you have individuals or leadership that are more focused on their work and their achievements than the team achievements. That, to me, that's the number one dividing point of an unhealthy organization. If they're not all in it for the right reasons and pulling together, and if people have individual agendas, that can just tear things apart because you're really putting yourself above the well-being of the organization. And organizational health is really kind of about the focus and the clarity of the organization and an agreed way forward. Well, when you have people that have their own agenda, they deviate from that if it doesn't meet their needs, and then you get confusion, and then things then things go a little wacky.
Yeah.
So
I think you can
use a technical term.
Right. I think you can imagine how that plays out, when we're on the mission field with a team of highly independent, very qualified people that have been, called by God to live out, what they think is their mission on the field. And then we bring them together to try to work as a team. And we hit some bumps sometimes.
Well, and that we do tend to attract the renegades and the radicals and the people that question things because it takes kind of sometimes that nerve to get out there on the field, to go to a new place, to relocate your family, learn a new language, learn a new culture. So the nature of missions oftentimes will attract those people, but I would submit that with good, healthy leadership, you can take that kind of energy, you can take that kind of motivation, and you can corral that together. And that, by the way, that's called leadership. So if you lead people in that, and then if you see the benefits, and what you really want to do is get all those people that have all these crazy ideas and give them the freedom to work the way they work best, but still towards a directive, still towards a goal. And it's really about the collective IQ of a group of people that work together. So it's not about how smart one person is or how well another person does this. It's the collective IQ. It's what can you do together. And Peter Drucker, who was one of my professors, he used to make this statement that all work is intended to be done by a team. And when you work as a team, you can minimize your weaknesses and you can highlight your strengths. And if you're working alone and doing your own thing, what you don't do well at doesn't get done. But when you're working with a team, the things that you can't do well, you bring others in, and then you can focus on those things that are what you are wired by God to do. So that's a part of team, and it takes a strategy, and it takes a leader to implement it. And I would submit that things rise and fall on leadership. And if you don't have good leadership, it's hard to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's so true. You just mentioned the word strategy. What would be some practical steps or strategies that either a team could take to work towards health or that a leader could use to try to move their team towards health?
Yeah, this just first of all understanding what health is. So that's kind of an important part, and a lot of people never take the time to analyze it. They just get so busy, they just the tearing of the urgent. It's like, what do we got to do today? But you really, and again, this is leaders lead in this area, and other people just kind of charge at it. So, and I would say if anybody's out there and you're going to ask me, I think later for resources, and I'll just jump the gun here. The book that is the book of all history on organizational health was written by Patrick Lencioni, and it's called The Advantage. So, and it just basically, in painting by the numbers, I mean, literally, you can read this and just fill in your organization, and it's that good where you can do it. And I'm telling you, I'm kind of a simpleton. It is simple. I read this book, and I applied this within the missions world, and it worked well. And I mentioned that I worked for this. I just kind of backed into this job that I had with this financial investment firm. I don't know anything about money. I mean, they made me the chief culture officer because I know how to develop culture and I know how to work with people. But we applied these principles. So this works in a Christian organization outside. These are principles for life. This company, this financial company, they were really good at investing money, but they were really bad at organizational health. And they brought me in, and we started, and they had about $1 billion under management, which in that world is not much. And within about 5 or 6 years, they went to $110 billion under management by just understanding what a healthy organization is and freeing up everybody to do what they want to do. So that's the pitch for organizational health. In Patrick's book, The Advantage, he took his top 4 books and combined them into one. So what is it? The 4 compulsions of a CEO, death by meetings, 5 dysfunctions of a team, and politics, silos, and turf wars, or whatever. So it's those books, and it's like, how do all these things work together? And there are 4 basic principles, and I'll just tell you the principles, and then people can read the book. But the first one is building a cohesive leadership team. So you have to really get together as a team, and you have to, first of all, even declare who your leadership team is. It's surprising how many groups and organizations have not clearly defined who is the leadership team, who's on it, who isn't, what's the responsibility. So once you have that, you need to become cohesive, and you need to work together. And I've done some of this stuff with groups of people that have worked together for 20 or 30 years, and they'd never really taken the time to bond kind of personally and in a cohesive way. They loved each other. They'd take a bullet for each other, but they never became a cohesive team. So the first principle of organizational health, this is right from Patrick Lencioni, by the way, is building a cohesive leadership team. The second principle is that you need to create clarity. And in his book, basically, under creating clarity, there are just 6 questions that he asks. And as an organization, if you can sit down and answer these 6 questions, it's going to be clear what you do and what you don't do and who does what. Really, and you could get a group of people together and probably define these 6 answers in, maybe a couple hours and written out in a page and a half. We're not talking about a 2-year strategic plan and all this, nonsense that goes into stuff. It's just like, why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? How will we succeed? What's most important now? And who must do what? You answer those questions, you create clarity for yourself, for if you're raising funds for the people that want to give funds to you. It's like, hey, this is what we do, and it's just clear. And then the other 2 are over communicating clarity. That's just kind of keeping it in front of everybody, and then reinforcing clarity. And that is, you hire, you fire, you promote, you get people on your team based on that clarity, based on where you're going. And this is not rocket science. I mean, this is the simplest way to do things. And using this model of organizational health, it's really simple. And a lot of the big companies even use it. We have Ford Motor Company has used it, Chick-fil-A, Southwest Airlines. And the leaders of these companies have basically said, this is so simple, we don't know why we didn't use this process earlier. And they give Lencioni credit for it. They say, this is the model we're using. But even smaller groups, even like teams of 5 and 6, it works for them as well. So it's simple. You read the book, you paint by the numbers, and you use a little wisdom and discernment, and you can get there.
That's great. That was actually one of the very, very helpful books I went through in my leadership training. So if I'll put it in the show notes, but if people would like a summary of that book, I'd highly recommend the book as well. But if you want to check out a summary, I have one of those on our website. So I'll put that in the show notes for people to check out if they'd like to do the fast version of that as well.
Yeah,
So
the good thing about Patrick is almost everything that he does, if you go to his webpage, tablegroup.com, and then you go to products, all the stuff that he does, he has summaries, he has handouts, he has walkthrough guides. He gives this stuff away.
that's great. I didn't know that.
People buy his books, and he's got videos on stuff of all this. So, I mean, it's really a good resource. So, down to the resource question, that's another one, but we'll get to that question later, I'm
Awesome.
sure.
So, as people listening to this, maybe they're on a team and they're maybe facing some conflict, or in the future may have some. What are some practical steps that teams could do to help work through conflict?
Well, like the poor, conflict is always with us. So we will always have conflict. If things are going okay today, we're going to say one thing tomorrow and screw it up. So you'll want to be familiar with and comfortable with conflict. But when you have to get through it, the first thing, and I mean, come from a psychological perspective and a managerial perspective, the number one absolute mandate of conflict is you have to admit that you have it. And you hear all these kind of little cute sayings about psychologists, but they say, until you admit you have a problem, you can't address it. Well, that is true. If you don't realize there's a conflict, and sometimes we like to soft sell it because really as Christians, we don't really like to take people on. We don't like to really kind of correct people. It's like, oh, it'll go away. And some of our temperaments, it's like, if I just let it starve to death, it'll die. And conflict never goes away. It just goes and hides somewhere, waiting to jump on you when you're not looking. So the first thing is you really do have to admit there is a conflict. Once you do that, you really are halfway home. Now, there are tons of books on conflict resolution and stuff like that, and that's good. If we're talking organizationally, though, now I got to go back to Patrick Lencioni again, his 5 dysfunctions of a team. That's just, it's telling you exactly where you are with this, and it's giving you kind of a way out. And without reviewing the whole book, I would say the first principle of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the first dysfunction you have is when there's an absence of trust. So if you've betrayed somebody, if you've offended somebody, if you've literally done something wrong, and you lose their trust, you can take a year, you can take 5 years to build trust, and you can lose it in one statement. And then you have to build it back again. So if there's conflict, it's usually because somewhere in there's a lack of trust. And then, so in Patrick's 5 dysfunctions of a team, the first dysfunction is a lack of trust. The second dysfunction is this fear of conflict. Well, so if we put this in the positive, 1, you have to develop trust. 2, you actually have to address conflict. So if you're in an organization, if you're a team on the mission field and there's 5 of you in there and there's some kind of conflict, if people aren't free to address conflict, so you have a leader that's maybe doing something that's just not right. If there's a lack of trust, the rest of the people on that team don't trust that leader enough to bring the conflict to their attention, unless it comes out in anger, and then you've lost the parade anyway if it comes out that way. So you have to create an environment where there's trust, and it takes time to build that trust. And then you have to make sure there's an environment where conflict can be addressed. Because if you have something going wrong on your team and people aren't free to address that, if they're not free to bring that up, you can never address the conflict and you can't advance to the next level. So there's a lot more to the 5 dysfunctions, but those are the 2 root principles, and they revolve around addressing conflict and having the freedom to address conflict.
Yeah, this is so critical for for growing for helping teams to work through that. Is as a team leader, is you've done work with different leaders in different areas. Any special advice you'd give to team leaders specifically? Maybe it could be for addressing a conflict situation, or just in general for health, things that they can do practically, tangibly to be able to help with their team's health.
Yeah. Well, if we go back to our principle of organizational health, to have a cohesive leadership team, there are some tools out there that can help people become more cohesive and to understand the strengths and weaknesses of one another. I think are crucial. And of course, and there's all these tests. There's the DISC, there's the Myers-Briggs. Even Patrick Lencioni's come up with his own, the 6 working geniuses. If I were a leader, and when I step into leadership situations, the very first thing I do is I get the group around me, and I do 1 or 2 of these assessments. I kind of figure out, who are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And when you take these kind of assessment tools, it's not like it's a horoscope. It's not like you take these things and you have to live it out. Now, I don't believe in horoscopes, but it's not like this is predicting. It's you take these things and you kind of find out what your natural inclination is to. Certain people like to work with groups. Certain people like to work alone. Some people like to get things done really quick and just get it off their table, and some people won't let things leave their desk until it's 100% checked and triple checked and takes 3 extra weeks. Well, to know the strengths and weaknesses, to know the preferences of the people that you work with, it does 2 things. It addresses first of all guilt. When you find out that you work well in one area but you don't work well in another area, and you kind of feel guilty. Like for me, just the whole financial world. I don't read financial statements. I don't do numbers. I'm kind of slightly dyslexic. I got all kinds of stuff. And you start throwing charts in front of me, and I glaze over. Well, and as a leader, it's like, man, I should know this stuff better. And then as I studied more about myself and my inadequacies, which is a lifelong study, I realized, as much as I want, I'm not wired to do this kind of stuff. And I don't feel guilty about it now. And what I say is, I don't feel guilty. I am guilty. It helps me to actually accept myself. So, to know these kinds of things about yourself and others, that whole kind of guilt thing goes away for you. For those that are working with you, it kind of takes this whole blame thing away. It's like, wow, Rick would be a better leader if he could read a spreadsheet. Well, it's like, Rick's never going to read a spreadsheet. So they kind of don't blame me anymore. And so it really helps to bring that sense of unity. So knowing what our preferences are and what our core is with a team, that's one thing that I would suggest. And the other thing that I would suggest as a team leader is that you just take a very, very close look at your culture. Mm-hmm. And of course, back to Drucker, I quote Patrick Lencioni and Peter Drucker, and those are the only 2 guys I know, and everybody else I just, I can only read so many books. So I've read, of course, between them, they've probably written 50 books. But the culture, Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's still hungry at lunch. So you might have a great strategy, but if you have a crummy culture within your group, you're going nowhere fast. So what is culture? Defining culture, having a positive culture, by the way, always starts at the top and it goes down. And there are a lot of things in organizational leadership that, participative management and quality circles and all this stuff, it starts at the grassroots levels and it works up. But culture is just defined how we do things around here. Mm-hmm. And how we do things, the boss kind of declares that. I don't care what's in your policy manual. I don't care what you say your culture is. The culture is what the leaders are doing, and everybody else takes their cues from that. And so And you can have a positive culture, and it can really, really impact your organization, your ministry. And you can have a crummy culture, and it can really hold you at bay. So take a close look at culture. That's the advice that I would give to leaders or team leaders.
It's kind of like the atmosphere that you live in, the air you breathe, the culture. You can't always maybe put a finger on it, but you feel it when you're in different organizations and in different teams. You can tell when there's not a healthy culture. It is palpable that you can feel that, and yeah, things don't get done because there's not a healthy working relationship. There's not a healthy trust. Yeah, so the good points there.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned knowing yourself as a leader and knowing those that you're working with. We've just been exploring that a lot, in the last several years. And I've found that there is nothing more exciting, something that really, really thrills my heart is when someone's working in their gifting and they're just plowing through and loving every part of it, but that's their strength and that's their gifting. And we've had a couple situations where there's been something that's been put on our plate that is neither Kyle's or my giftings. And we're just like, oh, that's going to be exhausting. It's going to take us a really long time. I don't know how to do this. Yet we have people within our circle that is their gifting. And at first I was hesitant to ask, for them to do this task, or would you be willing? Because I know how much I dreaded it. But this person was like, no, yes, I would love that. Give me a couple hours and I will be back to you, with the task that we had. And we've seen that happen so many times that when we understand people's giftings, when we can work together as a team and people know my weaknesses, know what I'm just not good at, but they can step in that gap or I can step in their gap. It is fun to watch people be excited to do the work put in front of them. And it really brings me a lot of joy.
The thing, specifically to what you just said about what drains you and what empowers you, that's what Lencioni has done with his 6 working geniuses. He basically says there are 2 areas that you're a genius at. There are 2 areas that really frustrate you, and there are 2 areas that you can do, but they don't bring you much joy. And he has this kind of test to assess what they are. And some of them are the people that are the wonder and invention. They're at the 30,000 foot level and just thinking about, contemplating their navel and the realities of 20 years from now. They just get off on that, whereas other people they're more tenacious. It's like, no, I'm at the 5,000 foot level. The tenacity causes me to. It's boots on the ground. I want details. I want a stack of files on my desk, and I want to work through them, and I want to get details. So to find out what actually brings you great joy and what brings you frustration, and reassign your responsibilities, that's what this 6 working genius is. And it's probably one of the newer assessment tools out there, but it's really helpful, and that's a lot cheaper than the other ones.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Well, talking about resources, and I know you've mentioned quite a few, but what else do you have? Other resources you'd like to share?
Well, again, if for people listening, I would start with, and this I guess will be a review because I've been talking about resources all along. But I would definitely, if you want to kind of get your team together and strengthen it and become organizationally healthy, I would really start with the advantage. And I would suggest you get a paper copy of this thing because, you're going to want to underline, you're going to want to take notes, you want to do references. And so that's the big umbrella thing. And then there are a good number of other books out there as well as the 6 working geniuses that we just talked about, the 5 dysfunctions. And then you can go online and just get videos of a number of these things that talk about it. And then right now within the kind of organizational world, there's just a ton of stuff on culture. And I would recommend just kind of Googling culture because there's so much out there that you could just get lost in it. But to find something that specifically meets your needs of identifying where your group is culture. And if you find some things in your culture you don't like, how to address that. So there's just more material than you could read. So you really want to be discriminating on what you read, because you could spend the rest of your life reading on culture, and it all, everybody says about the same thing, but you want to get something particularly that meets your particular needs. So I would definitely suggest that.
That's really good. And I remember reading something online that you're involved in something called a group called Standing Stone. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Standing Stone, a real interesting group. They're located here in Southern California, but they're all over the country. What it is, you guys are probably aware that there's just kind of a crisis going on in the church today. And they did a survey last year, and they said 70% of the pastors are seriously considering leaving their role. Through COVID, through financial issue stuff, it's really difficult. So Standing Stone, it is really shepherding shepherds. And it's people that have been longtime pastors, and they now say, my ministry is to really come alongside people in the ministry. And oftentimes they'll do it as a husband and wife. Sometimes just one member or the other will do it. But it's basically finding people in churches that are hurting and coming alongside them, and it's really guiding ministry leaders into healthy ministry. And half of it is kind of preparing them for it. The other half is just crisis intervention. And if a pastor has some issues and they're falling apart, they got no one to talk to. I mean, if they go to the elders, it's like, oh, you got that issue? Well, maybe we ought to let you go. Or to confine somebody in their congregation, it's very difficult. Being a pastor can be a lonely role. And there's a lot of great benefits, and oftentimes there are great relationships within a church. But when you're in conflict, there aren't a lot of places to go. So Standing Stone is a ministry of about 250 pastors that come alongside those that are struggling and help them into health.
Great. And what's your role there?
I'm on the board, so board, kind of governing boards and guiding boards and stuff is kind of my world these days. The guy that's the president is a guy that I've been mentoring for a while, and so he asked me to join the board, and I did.
Very good.
Are missionaries able to reach out to Standing Stone, or do you really need to be a states-based pastor?
They can. They can just go to standingstoneministry.org, and if they have something, they can do stuff through Zoom. Now we have people that are geographically located, but they have a few that are in a couple of different countries. I'm not sure which countries right now. That's starting to expand. But if somebody were just saying, "Hey, I'm alone, I got issues, and I just need someone to talk to," they would be happy, I think, to set up a Zoom kind of relationship and help where they can. And they're people that have been through it. They're people that know the pains and the joys of ministry.
That's good.
That's fantastic.
Is there anything, before we have a few questions kind of at the end that we like to ask people, before we dive into that though, is there anything else you'd like to share or challenge the missionaries or missionary leaders with?
Well, I guess there are a few things that I have these kind of all-encompassing statements that are probably mostly true. But I guess if you're in leadership and you're struggling, just to really clarify what it is you're struggling with and to identify what you're expecting. And I believe that most all pain in life comes from unmet expectations. Whether it's expectations in your family, expectations with the leader, expectations with God. Now, God wants us to be energetic and innovative, set goals and really stretch out there. But when you have unrealistic expectations and they're not met, that's what brings pain. So clarify your expectations, and that can resolve a lot of issues. And And for those that are leaders, if you can step back and just try to look at the situation, I kind of think leadership is really like adult daycare. It's really helping everybody to play well in the sandbox and help meet their expectations. Sometimes these leadership things and dealing with things can be pretty simple if we just step back. And for me, I find the greatest help I get is from reading the book of Proverbs. I read the book of Proverbs every month. I probably have for 15 years. And whatever day it is, I read a proverb that, in addition to my devotions and study and all that, I just like, what's today? Today is the 10th, so I read Proverbs 10 this morning. And just to over and over and over again read God's wisdom on how you deal with leadership, how you deal with fools, how you deal with money, how you deal with relationships. A big advice that I have is to really kind of keep your head deep into Proverbs.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And that's all I know.
That's good reminders there. I remember our I had a Bible school professor said, when you deal with sheep, don't be surprised when you step in sheep poop. Yeah. And just those expectations that it happens as we're working with people, and so just to expect that changes your perspective on problems. That when they come up, you're not surprised by them if you're expecting them. And sometimes if you're expecting no problems, you're in the wrong role if you're in leadership. So that's been a helpful reminder of that. So at the end of the podcast, we like to just ask a few fun questions. First one is, what's something you've read recently or listened to that you've enjoyed or found helpful?
Yeah, I drive a little more than I used to, and so I started listening to Audible books, and I do about 20 to 25 books a year on Audible, and man, I get to read just some bizarre stuff and some really solid stuff, but it's just all over the map. But one of the books I've read most recently is the biography of Elon Musk, by Walter Isaacson. He's the guy that wrote the book on jobs as well, and he's really quite a biographer. But to just see how a guy that's focused. Now, there's all kinds of issues with Elon Musk, and I'm not promoting him to be, on the board of your mission agency or anything, but he is an example of what happens when somebody is focused and they know what they want to do. I mean, he's created 4 or 5 things that everybody said are not possible. Mm-hmm. You would never be able to make payments electronically, and he comes up with PayPal. You'll never be able to start a car company and overtake the big 3. And he did, and his company is more valuable than all 3 of them combined, I think. They said you could never set up a charging station around the country alone without the government help, and he's got a better one than the government. And his thing is he wants to give a civilization going on Mars, and he may do it. I mean, I don't know if there's anything theologically against living on Mars, but just what I learned from that book is the idea of being focused and kind of not taking no for an answer. It's like, I think I can do this. And beyond that, I'm not recommending his lifestyle or anything else. You always, when you read things, you got to take the good and the bad, but just the intense focus and where you can go if you really are committed to something. And he is committed. Maybe he should be committed. I don't know. But anyway, I love the book, and I kind of love what he's doing in the innovative space.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks for sharing.
I can definitely see that. Now, I love asking this question. What activity or hobby do you like to do to stay energized or refreshed?
Well, I see a lot of mission leaders that, they're just they seem to be uptight. They don't know how to have fun. And I think fun is a big deal. Now, my first degree, my Bachelor of Science degree, was in recreation. So, like, I am a professional player. I play. And some have said that I work at my play and I play at my work. But I can work hard for, like, 20 hours straight and then just shut it off and have fun and forget I was ever even doing anything. But so the mentality of not taking yourself too serious and knowing when to walk away. But for me, the two things that I like most is golf. I'm getting ready to go golf in about 40 minutes. As soon as we get off of this, I try to golf as much as I can. And I like to fish. Day after tomorrow, I'm going up to the Sierras, and I'm fishing in lakes and streams up in the Sierra Nevada mountains for a week. And so just doing things with friends and just hanging out and not taking yourself too serious. We got to learn how to play, and we got to learn how to smile. I once knew a guy that said, I never trust a leader that couldn't take a pie in the face. And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing. So if you just can't have fun with the troops, just chill out a little bit.
That's great.
What's a resource, tool, app, life hack that you've found helpful?
I think, most people would know this if they travel, and most missionaries are on the road and traveling, but the app that I use the most is TripIt. And it's like, I used to have a secretary that would print out my agendas and my flight schedules and my hotel and would do maps. And of course, those are days past. But man, with a TripIt, just anything you get, you throw on there. And when I get on a trip, it's just like everything is there. What gate I'm at, what flight I'm on, where my car is, a map from my car to my hotel, or whatever I'm doing. It's just, it's the single best app that I've used.
All right.
Wow.
Great. I haven't used that one. I'll have to check
sounds
that out.
amazing.
Oh my gosh! Oh, you got to get it. Yeah, it's free. Now I get the pro version where you pay $40 a year. But then what that'll do is, like, if I have a flight, and let's say it's a $700 flight, and if I fly mostly Delta, I have like 3 million miles with Delta, so they take pretty good care of me. Well, if I book a flight for $700 and it gets kind of reposted and it's like it's $600, TripIt will send me an email saying your flight is now available at a $100 discount, and you can go. So I save more money on doing the pro version than the 40. So they track that and then you call up Delta and kind of go, hey, I hear the thing, and they go, oh yeah, we can rebook you, and you just saved $100.
Nice. Okay, that's great.
So TripIt.
We're going to have to look into that.
Great advice on that one there. Is there any place that if people wanted to find out more about what you're doing or anything like that they could reach out to you? Or?
Yeah, I'm at the stage of life that I only do what I want to do.
That's a good stage.
And there's a lot I want to do, by the way. And I love helping missionaries, and I love helping organizations and boards, leadership teams. But like, I'm not selling anything, so I'm not like on LinkedIn, and I don't want people to, think I'm looking for anything. So, if anybody has any interest in anything I said, they can just email me at rick.hicks@om.org, and I do that. But I'm not like out. It's like, hey, go on my webpage, and it'll show you the 14 really cool seminars I do and how much I charge and all that nonsense. I'm not selling anything. I just kind of hang out and help people when I can.
That's awesome. And I know you've written a book, co-authored a book with Hans Finzel called Launching Your Encore. So if there's anyone nearing retirement that is thinking through that process, I'm sure they could glean some ideas from that book that you guys wrote. And I think that's on Amazon. Is that right?
It may be on Amazon, but if you contact me, I can get it to you for cheaper. So I sell it cheaper than Amazon does, and there aren't many copies left, like most books there. But if you're like 55 or older, basically at about that time, that's when people in their heads kind of start saying, I got more time behind me than I have in front of me. So how am I gonna land this plane? How is this going to end? And it's really to kind of think. So this book is not about retirement. It's like when your main act is over, what are you going to do that still brings you meaning and purpose? And there's stuff you can do to prepare for that. So you might start thinking at it at 55. You may not deal with it till 65 or 70, but you're starting to think, I've really always wanted to do a hot dog stand. So I'm going to start, going to hot dog stands and seeing what it's like and talking to guys, or I want to Some guys say, I want to be a marshal at a golf course. I just want to drive around a cart and yell at people and, show my authority. So whatever it is, you can kind of start. And we give you this really walkthrough from A to Z to kind of figure out who you are, what you've been in the past, and what you do or don't want to do in the future, and how you can start kind of easing into it. So that's what it's about.
Very good. Well, Rick, thank you so much for, we'll include some of the things you'd mentioned there in the show notes for people if they like to follow up on any of that. But thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us on the Missions Life podcast. It's been a real joy to spend this time with you.
Well, I've enjoyed chatting with you guys as well. Thank you.
All right. And Lord willing, someday maybe we'll bump into each other in person.
That'd be nice.
Sounds good. Well, that's all for this show, and we want to thank you again for spending your valuable time with us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider taking just a moment and giving us a great review. Your review will help people find the podcast and allow these resources to encourage more people. If you took something valuable away from this episode, please share it with someone who would enjoy it.
If you'd like to find the show notes, blog posts, and free resources for ministry and leadership, as well as some information on my book, Overflowing, visit kylefarran.com. That's KYLEFARRAN.com. Hope to see you soon on a future podcast.